Hi there. When we last left our heroes, they had just entered into this area called Barovia, and they met the individual who rules this land, the Count Strahd von Zarevich. According to him, they can't leave. They're prisoners here, and they very much want to get out, but it sounds like there's walls of mist that encircle this entire valley, and so they can't just walk through it apparently because it'll kill them. So they're stuck in this area and they want to figure out how to get out. Now, they had met the traveling folk called the Vistani that seemed to know a lot about this area and the outside world. And when they talked to them, they learned that this individual, Strahd von Zarevich, has ruled this land for hundreds of years. They say that he is ancient and he is the land. And according to them, he's some sort of undead creature called a vampire. Now, he hasn't always been this way, but throughout the decades, he has turned more evil and malicious, and he's ruling Barovia with this iron fist. And the Vistani, they want him to be laid to rest. They want someone to defeat him, dethrone him, so that the area of Barovia can be opened up, so the mist can depart. They want someone to save this land. According to their elder, Madame Ava, these heroes are the destined heroes that are supposed to free this land. When she gave them the card reading, she told them about tools that they can use in order to defeat Strahd. And so now the heroes are thinking that this might be the only way that they can save this area and free themselves from this contained valley. So that's going to be like number one on their to-do list now. To learn a little bit more about their common enemy, they hear some stories from the Vistani that night about a rebellion that was led a couple years back. This very powerful archmage had battled Strahd and led an uprising from the people of Barovia. But Strahd had defeated this mage and he had squashed that rebellion. And ever since then, nobody has ever tried. But hopefully the heroes can be that new peg, that new gear into the machine that can get this rebellion up and running again. Now, in order to learn more about this area, the Vistani tell them that there is a town, a village over to the west called Kresk that they can go to, and they can learn more about this area and maybe a little bit more about Strahd himself, so they can figure out how to free this land. So that's going to be next on their to-do list once they wake up the next morning. Now the night passes and they wake up and they look out on the day, and it seems like there are just overcast, these clouds that are never ending in Barovia. They never allow sunlight to enter into the realm, so it is constantly, perpetually dark there. And so they look across this beach, this lake that they landed at, and they see that there's this large tower that's kind of looming over the distance of the horizon on the beach. And they see that there's a wagon over there. So they're a little curious as to this, and they kind of want to go over there and check out this tower. But before they do, they all collectively hear this voice inside of their head, and it says, "Feed me. Can you feed me right now?" And they're just kind of like, who said that? And the voice responds to all of them collectively at the same time.
"My name is Buggo, and I'm the one who lives in your head now, so if you could feed me, that'd be fantastic."
And they're trying to think about, when did they get a voice in their head? And then it hits them. Y'all remember about the little sentient psychic squid that they put in their ears? Well, the gnomes told them that you need to take that thing out before the sunrise of the next day. Otherwise, it's gonna start eating the squishy parts. And everyone forgot to do that. So the next morning, they reach into their ears and it's not there anymore. It is burrowed inside of their head. And when they all look at each other and they try and think, what can we do to get this thing out? Buggo responds that,
"There's no use to it. I will soon emerge and burst from your head as a beautiful butterfly."
And they realize this is a huge danger. They need to get rid of this thing. So they all hold hands and they collectively expend some spell slots to use Lesser Restoration. And it sounds like it works. It sounds like this creature dies inside of their head very dramatically. And then, pain. They get a migraine, a huge migraine that just shoots up into their heads, and they all take psychic damage. And Buggo, this sentient squid-like creature that's psychically communicating with all of them, just laughs. And then, as he does, they can tell that there's this like aura, this sonar that expends out, and it just picks up on all the little life forces that are around them. It sounds like when this creature is happy, he uses this life detection ability in order to potentially get more hosts. So They all realize that they can't get rid of this thing without taking some extreme actions, so they're gonna go along with their journey and maybe hopefully they can run into something to get rid of this thing so it doesn't burst out of their head like a beautiful butterfly. Now they walk the beach over towards this giant tower and this carriage that's in front of it. And when they get to the carriage, they can see that it's locked and it has a sign on it that says, "Keep out." Now the ranger, she picks up that sign, she tosses it into the lake, and she tells the rogue, "Why don't you pick that door?" So the rogue goes over and he starts messing around with the tumblers and he hears that satisfying click. And as he opens the door, he feels a little bit of tension as something is connected towards the inside of the door, and then it releases. And the last thing that he sees when looking inside of this carriage is this giant vial of green liquid falling down and igniting 100 different vials of alchemist fire. And it just booms out and hits all the party members. It knocks 2 of them unconscious, and the other 2, they're scrambling around trying to figure out what to do as this burning carriage is in front of them. And they realize that this land is dangerous. They need to be more careful. Now, after healing up, they head over towards the tower, and they see this giant door and a plaque right above it that says Xanthar. And then they see a symbol that's kind of etched into the door. It looks like kind of ruins or pictographs, and then like a line tying both of them together. And the ranger, she jumps up, she's super excited, and she starts dancing along with the symbols that's on there. She does the correct movements and the door just clicks open and it slowly moves inwards. And as they enter into this tower, they can see that this is a 4-story tower. The bottom floor looks like it has a lot of supplies and monster hunting equipment and different resources that they might need. So they all replenish a lot of their things inside their adventuring kits. And then they see that there's a platform that looks like it has 4 clay golems that are around it. And it has a chain that leads up the tower. And they all cautiously go over and they stand onto the tower, and when they do, the clay golems start moving and rotating this gear, and it brings up the platform, kind of like an elevator. Now they get over to the 2nd floor, and when they get there, a lot of them jump off, and they see that there is just tons of books that are strewn all over the place. Some of them are burned, other ones are in bad repair, and then they see that there is a marble bust of a person's head that's over in the corner, and his eyes kind of move around and looks at them, and he says, "Oh, hello, my name is Buster. Welcome to the tower. How may I help you?" And they have now met this animated bust. They go over and talk to him, and they learn that he was created by the mage, the wizard of this tower named Xanthar, in order to be his companion. And when he was kind of with his master, he learned a lot of things about this land, about Barovia, and he learned a lot of things about magic. And since he has been here, he has been learning even more through all these books. And apparently, the newest resident of this tower, an individual by the name of Esmeralda, has been taking care of him, has been helping him. And so he is very smitten with her. He absolutely adores Esmeralda, and he talks about her in high regard and just sings her name to the graces. And so whenever they talk to him, he's constantly wondering if they've run into her and if maybe he can, they can move him so he can go see her again. Now, 2 party members stay there with Buster talking to him, and the other 2 jump back on the platform and they move up to the 3rd floor. And when they get there, they can see that it's an observatory. And it looks like it's got some telescopes that are outside the window, and it's got these brilliant pictographs of stars that are just gleaming and shining onto the ceiling. And they're all different constellations of Faerun, the place that they come from. And they start to realize, like, hey, last night we didn't see any stars in this land. It sounds like the clouds that are in Barovia even block starlight from entering in. So whoever had created this tower, they were kind of nostalgic or homesick of their land, and they had built all these different star constellations on the ceiling. Then they jump onto the platform again and they go to the 4th floor, and they can see that it's definitely like a living quarters. It looks like there's a suit of armor that's on like a little mantelpiece, and there is a desk with some quills and ink and parchment, and then they see that there is a board up on the wall, and it looks kind of like an investigative board. There are tons of pictures of all these individuals and like drawings of them, and then there are strings leading between different areas and different people, and then there is a large picture up on the top, and it's of this older gentleman, this elf, and it says Rudolph van Richten, and then there's a big question mark and it says, where is he? And it sounds like whoever this person who lives here now, Esmeralda. She is searching for this elf. She's trying to find him. The people on the 4th floor, they call down towards Buster and they ask who this individual is, Rudolph Van Richten. And he tells them with this kind of scowl on his face that he's a self-proclaimed monster hunter, but he's a terrible individual, that he actually tortured Buster by burning some of his books in order to get information out of him. He's ruthless. And so they start thinking that, okay, this is someone who might be in the land who could help out, but maybe we don't want his help, we don't know. And so they start investigating his living quarters to see if maybe they can find some more clues. And they see that there is that armor that's over on the mantelpiece. And so the warlock, he asks the rogue, can you identify that? And the rogue's like, sure. So he goes over and he touches the armor in order to cast Identify. And then the armor bursts open and this maw extends out and slams down on him with its jaws. They have now encountered their first mimic. Now at this point, the mimic slams down onto the rogue and it's holding him in its jaws, and the warlock is kind of yelling out to everyone else, and he wants to get them out of there. He wants to make sure that they're free of this mimic. So he grabs onto the rogue and he casts Thunderstep in order to teleport down towards the bottom of the tower. But the tower is in pretty bad shape. It's in bad disarray, and the higher that they go up, the worse it looks. And as he casts that spell, and just this energy emanates out, this concussive blast, and it starts to destroy some of the load-bearing columns of this tower, and the tower starts to fall down. The roof starts to cave in, and now it's a race for everyone to get to the bottom of the tower and out of there before the entire thing collapses on top of them. Now when the warlock cast Thunderstep, he grabbed onto the rogue and he teleported him down, but because the mimic was grabbing onto the rogue, he teleported the mimic down there with them. So the mimic was still clasped onto the rogue, and it had knocked him unconscious at this point. So now at this point, the warlock, he grabs his Morning Star and he speaks to it. Now the Morning Star can't speak back to him because it's been silenced, but he asks him, is this a new creature? Can I use this new power? And the Morning Star vibrates once. It sounds like he can still communicate, but in a very limited capacity. So the warlock gets some new power and he slams down onto the mimic. And he's trying to avoid the now grappled and held rogue that's in his jaws, because if he hits the rogue while he's unconscious, he could kill the rogue. So he slams down on the mimic, and he rolls high enough that he's able to hit only the mimic, and he knocks it back and knocks it off of his companion, and he ends up killing the mimic. But then the ceiling is coming down at this point. The druid is turned into a hawk to fly out of a window, and the ranger, she's grabbing onto this bust, this marble bust, and she's trying to take it down with her, and they start running out the fastest that they can, and they exit out before it falls down and collapses. Now, they haven't even been in Barovia for a day, and they've already destroyed a wagon and an entire tower. And Buster's looking over at this tower, and then he looks at the wagon and he says, well, I'm glad I'm on your side. Now, because of the psychic attack previously, the wagon and the tower, they're in pretty bad shape, and they know that they need to rest. So they decide to go over into some woods that are nearby and maybe set up camp and try and get a full night's rest if they can, so that they can heal up. And Buster is telling them that it's called the Spholic Woods, and it extends throughout this entire realm. And they're all like, oh, Buster's already telling us some pretty useful stuff about the area. And so they start to rest, and the druid, he is very curious because he remembers that name, Xanthar, as someone who's associated with the Amber Temple. This is this place in which his evil book comes from. So in the middle of the night, he starts to have this private conversation with Buster to see if maybe he can get some more information about this place, about Xanthar and the Amber Temple. Now Buster, he says that he can definitely help him out, but he's not supposed to tell any information about his master, but he would probably bend those rules a little bit if the party can do something for him. It seems that he's extremely smitten with this individual, Esmeralda, and he wants them to get him 3 different items: a bottle of wine, a book of poems, and a bouquet of flowers, because he wants to bestow that upon Esmeralda the next time he sees her. And so if they get him these items, then he'll definitely tell him more about this wizard and this place called the Amber Temple. Now, as they're getting ready for sleep, the ranger, she has a vision. This is something that she's had off and on ever since she was a little girl. It's kind of been built into her backstory that every once in a while, if the player rolls a 4, she can have a vision of something that will happen in the future. And she does. She has this vision, and it seems that there's this large abbey, this kind of church in this complex, and it has this large bell tower towards it that's ringing out. And as it does, she can hear the guttural screams of these animals and this kind of like this ominous vibe of this area. And then she comes back towards where she is and she tells everyone about this area. And they're not really sure what it means, but they know that it's probably going to be in their future at some point. Now everyone tries to get some sleep, but as they do, in the middle of the night, they start to feel some pressure on them. They start to feel something that's crawling on top of them. And the druid, he produces some flame to look around, and as he does, he can see that the roots and vines of the nearby trees are starting to wrap around everyone. They're starting to try and squeeze them and suffocate them. And everyone is jumping too, and they're brandishing their weapons and pulling out some spells, and they're trying to hack at these roots, and they're trying to get free of this woods that's attacking them in the middle of the night. And they suddenly, they're able to, the druid casts this fire spell, and he accidentally casts it so that it sprays back on him, and it actually burns him. But they're able to get free of these roots of this evil forest, and they move back towards the clearing of this beach. And they're catching their breath, they haven't really healed at all, and they're realizing that there is really no safe place in this area. Now it's the middle of the night, they're all on this beach and they're looking around, and the druid, he sees this raven that's up on top of this tree, and it's looking down at him and cawing, and he starts to use animal friendship and speak with animals, and he reaches out towards this raven and he's all like, hey, can you tell me about what's going on over here? Like, can you help me out, buddy? And the raven speaks to him and he says, nope, and then it starts flying away. And because it said no to the druid, it triggers the curse. And the druid just instantly sees all red and flash of anger and just like rage, and he reaches into his spells and he uses Thunderbolt. And he shoots a Thunderbolt over at this flying raven, escaping raven, and it just zaps this raven and it just electrocutes him, and then it falls down to the ground, and as it does, it turns back into a man, and then it splats onto the ground. And they all go over and they investigate, and there's this individual who has this like large black like feathered cloak and like this dagger, and not really a lot else on him. And they all just kind of like, I wonder who that was. I think it was a spy of some sort. So the druid, he grabs all these things, the cloak and everything, and he just chucks the body into the river, and he's all like, huh, nice cloak. And then they decide, well, we can't stay here, so we might as well just walk down towards this area called Kresk, this new village over to the west, and maybe we can get someone that can take us in for the night. As they start walking down this long dirt path through this canopy of woods, they see that there's a wagon that's heading west as well. It's about to pass them, and it looks like it's heading extremely fast. And there's an individual on there with, crates and barrels behind him, and then there are 4 different ghouls that are attached to the cart, and they're starting to attack this individual. So all the party members, they're sick of, taking all this damage and sick of being helpless in this land. They jump into action and they start fighting these ghouls. And then they defeat them, they wipe the floor with all of them, and they rescue this individual who's on this cart. And he says thank you. He introduces himself. He says his name is John, and he's from the local winery called the Wizards of Wine. And he's on his way to Kresk. And so they ask if they can get a ride with him, and he says yes. So he allows them into the wagon, and he starts taking off towards Kresk, and he tells them a little bit about himself and what the wine means towards people of Barovia. And as they start getting towards this village of Kresk, they look out and they can see that there's an entire wall of mist at the very edge of this map, at the very edge of the western front of this valley. And it doesn't look like anyone can escape out of that. And John tells them that, yeah, anyone who goes into it, it's poisonous. It'll instantly kill you. And then they come up around a corner and they see the village of Kresk. And it's got all these large timber trees built into what looks like a defensive wall. And then behind it, on the other side of this wall, they also see a mountainous kind of hill, and it looks like there is an abbey that's built up there. This large kind of religious, edifice, and it's built into the hill. And as they're looking out there, the ranger, she can remember her vision about this place. And then the bell tolls, and they hear what sounds like monstrous screams of animals and people that are emanating from that hill. And they realize that that's going to be where they need to go. And that's where we finished. This is our first full session in Barovia at this point, and the heroes are just now, the tip of the iceberg, trying to discover what's going on in this land. So stick with us, and we'll learn more about what happens in their trips through Barovia. Everyone be safe out there. Bye now.